Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Welcome to Next Year Insights one-on-one discussion with Kingsley Eze, CEO Tennessee Professional Services. The topic for today is Africa and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Leap Forward or Be Left Behind. And I'm glad to have Kingsley Eze, Chief Executive, Tennessee Professional Services and Genesis. We'll talk about these two companies as we go along, but I've known Kingsley for maybe way too long. We were colleagues in both Diamond Bank PLC and Accenture before he moved on to start a number of tech companies and then started Tennessee about 10, 11 years ago. Tennessee has grown in leaps and bounds. They're currently in 4 African countries and also in the United Arab Emirates. They provide services to firms in the oil industry and in the financial services, manufacturing, etc. A few years ago, Tennessee started an innovation hub in the Southeast, Genesis, which the vice president visited a few years ago and marveled at the quality of work that's going on there. So on that note, Kingsley Eze, you're welcome to this discussion.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Excellent. So basically what we will explore today is Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is upon us. Back in the 1700s, 1765, with the discovery of coal and steam engine, it powered mechanization, and that triggered the first industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution happened almost 100 years later in 1870 with mass production driven basically by electricity and oil-based power. Another 100 or so years later, 1969, mass production became the thing, driven more by electronics and information technology. Less than 100 years, right about the 50-year mark, we're now starting the fourth industrial revolution, which is going to lead to a lot of automated production driven by a convergence of a number of things. So you've got big data, you've got artificial intelligence, you've got genomics, cryptocurrencies, etc. Converging at the same time to change the way production is done and the way we're going to live our lives going forward. And I think that's a good place to ask my first question, which is, what would this fourth industrial revolution look like for Africa? If you could paint a picture for us to start with.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I'm very happy to join you on this session of your program. You've already given a historic context, to the various industrial revolutions. The first one, the second one, the third one, and here today we're in the fourth one. An interesting thing about the fourth industrial revolution is that it's nothing like the other ones. Okay, it involves the intensive convergence of information technology, Internet of Things, autonomous machines, robotics, big data, and analytics. It's characterized by the blurring lines between industries, and the fusion of, biological, physical, and digital spheres. Okay, it's not just a continuation of the digital revolution. It's distinguished by its velocity, scope, and systems impact. Okay, now, the speed at which the wave of, Industry 4.0, like it's also called, moves is incomparable to any other industrial revolutions, we've experienced. It is disrupting almost every industry in every, nation of the world. Now, the impact of these changes signals the transformation of the entire systems of production, management, and governance. So it touches on everything. It touches on the way we live. It touches on the way we work. It touches on the way we play. And then most importantly, it also touches on the way, nations of the world are governed today. Now, where does this leave Africa? Okay, sadly, Africa essentially played an observer role in the other three revolutions. And we actually don't have a choice. It's actually a swim or sink scenario. You know, it's either we connect, you know, with the wave and transform the fate of Africa as a continent, or we stay back and be doomed. In fact, Yuval Noah Harari, you know, one of the leading thought leaders today, in his recent book, 21 Lessons of the 21st Century, he came up with a very interesting analogy where he said that that the fusion of biotech and artificial intelligence is going to create a scenario where you're going to have humans that are going to be super intelligent. Okay, is going to lead to another segmentation of humanity, of mankind. Okay, and one of the things he said that I find interesting is that he said that, you know, that segmentation of mankind, okay, is going to lead to the emergence of what he called the stupid class. Okay, now the stupid class essentially refers to humans who, either by economic reasons or by their inability to adopt the, you know, technologies of the day, will become so inconsequential in the scheme of things, will become so unemployable, so useless, so to say, you know, in the scheme of things, that they will be categorized, you know, as the useless class. That's actually the term he used. He called it the useless class. So Africa is left with no choice. Now, what are the factors driving the fourth industrial revolution? They're essentially connectivity, data, and customer. In fact, one interesting thing about this is that its evolution is amorphous, because it's essentially driven by ideas and creativity, innovation, essentially. Okay, it's not sequential, such that, you know, one progress will now lead to another progress, and it's not sequential. So you really don't know where the next big thing is going to happen. The next big thing will be a result of, you know, connecting different innovations that exist in silos, and someone comes up with the ability to piece it together, and it evolves something that will completely disrupt the way things are done. You know,
so that is kind of scary for an
scary.
Africa. Yeah. That, you know, if we were to judge Africa where Africa is today, you know, we might say that we've already fallen into Harari's classification of that useless class, right? Yeah. So the question, therefore, especially for someone like you who runs businesses in all these different African countries, what are you seeing in these countries? What are you seeing in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Ethiopia, in Angola, in Dubai, for instance? You know, in terms of how Africa is getting ready for the fourth industrial revolution, or are these conversations being had at all with the people you're talking to?
So Patrick, you know, the good thing is that I think the conversation is being heard. The buzz is out there now. But the good thing is we're actually not constrained by where we're coming from. We're not constrained by the deficiency, you know, in what you may want to call legacy infrastructure. Okay. Yes, we've lagged behind in, you know, other developing and developed nations, you know, by the several, you know, essential indicators of the fourth revolution, which are essentially, you know, infrastructure, access to technology, and education. Okay. According to ICT Development Index, Africa still lags behind in all these, you know, factors that I mentioned. But the good thing is that in 2018, okay, nearly half of the global mobile money accounts, okay, is in Africa or from Africa. And it is said that this growth is going to continue. You know, the growth in mobile money accounts will continue, you know, rising in Africa, even through up to 2025. Okay. Now, artificial intelligence, blockchain, you know, all these new technologies are also attracting a lot of interest in Africa, given where we come from, you know, or given because of where we are. You know, a good example is that something like blockchain, because of the high security that the blockchain technology offers, African financial institutions are seriously working on adopting blockchain as the core technology for driving, financial transactions, or for driving financial systems. So while yes, we are not there yet, while yes, we are deficient in some of the critical components, the nature of the fourth industrial revolution also offers us, very good ability or capability, to leapfrog and become part of the groove, as it were. So things are happening in Africa. If I take example of some of the places where we operate, like you mentioned initially, we're in Kenya. Kenya is referred today as, the Savannah Silicon. Quite a number of interesting things are happening in Kenya. The growth, the ICT growth in Kenya has been at about 10.8% since the past 10 years, and that is increasing the GDP of Kenya by about 10%. Just ICT contribution. Okay, you have a lot of fantastic products coming out of Kenya. M-Pesa is a good example. M-Pesa is a product that essentially put Kenya on the map as a leading country when it comes to innovative technologies. Mobile payments is so pervasive in Kenya that the cattle rearer in the remotest part of Kenya is able to sell his products, sell his cattle, and do a transfer or receive money, in that remote location without necessarily going, into a bank. Okay, financial inclusion is happening at an unprecedented rate because some of the hitherto, barriers to entry, for people who are unbanked have been taken away by technology. You really don't need to get into a physical bank branch today, to open an account. All those things can actually be done, via.
So I understand some of those, right? And I know how they're all built on mobile telephony. So Africa made a good bet on GSM. GSM is paying dividends in terms of mobile banking, etc. And we always go back to the GSM example. But maybe that kind of clouds the challenge of driving technology in Africa. Why do I say that? With GSM, you put one base station here, you put another base station here, and you can connect, right? But when you think about the challenges of, say, artificial intelligence, big data, cryptos, gene coding, and all of these things, and these are the things that are going to come together to make your fridge talk to your TV and talk to your car and talk to your brain. In fact, I think a few weeks ago, it was Tesla that tested, some kind of chip that you put on the head, and you can control your computer even without touching your computer. So my question is, given the state of our technology infrastructure and access and the quality of education we are getting in Africa, where we're still training people, to become, Yoruba teachers and Igbo teachers and so on, yeah? How do we connect with this world that is moving at such a fast pace? Aren't we going to be left behind?
No, so interesting, Patrick. So the truth is, yes, the gap is massive, and we really need to bridge the gap if we want to be counted. Okay. Now, but the good thing about the fourth industrial revolution is that it is not physical resource intensive. Okay, so you don't need to do the rail line from Kara Namoda to Calabar, So by having the right, education, by having, the right policies, by government, by having the right policies that will provide some incentive for the private sector, for individuals to innovate. But so the key word here is innovation. In Nigeria, in Africa, we have a massive pool of young people. Our young people are not, our Generation Z and millennials are not deterred by our history. They are as forward-looking, they are savvy as their contemporaries in Europe and America. So there are quite a few factors which I would like to share with you, which represents, what I'll call the determinants of leapfrogging or being left behind. One of them is fixing the labor skill mismatch. Now, technology, is inclined towards replacing low-skilled workers, which is very abundant, in Africa. So what it means is that if the governments must invest in education, governments must focus on reskilling programs to ensure that technology supplements instead of replacing labor. Okay. Now, the other thing also is that, there is need to enhance, some sort of agile governance, for effective management of, Industry 4.0. So a major factor here is, the regulatory environment, that will deal with cybersecurity issues, that will deal with governance issues, that will deal with the right incentives, for private sector to, the private sector, I usually like to refer to the private sector players as ants and sugar. Put sugar in any way you want to put it, cover sugar, whatever way you want to put it, cover it, put off the lights, give it time, ants will find the sugar. That's the way investors are. If you have the right regulatory environment, investors are going to come, they're going to put their money. Now, then, of course, there is also the need, for physical and digital infrastructure that will increase our tele density, internet density, and broadband penetration. Now, but there is also another factor that I consider very critical. It is, what I call the unification of the African market. Today, African market, Africa as a continent, if you look at it in market terms, is a balkanized market, existing in silos. And a good example that bring out this fact, very strongly, is a comparison between MTN and Amazon. MTN Group was formed in 1994 in South Africa. At that same time, Amazon was born in the US. Now, 25 years later, MTN is among the top 5 companies valued at about $9 billion, as of September 2018, while Amazon became the world's second $2 trillion company, this year, after Apple. Now, what made Amazon grow 100 times faster than MTN? MTN operates a product-focused linear business model in 24 different low-income markets with different policy and regulatory constraints. So the operating environment of MTN in Nigeria is completely different from the operating environment of MTN in Ghana, of MTN in Zaire and other places where they operate. Okay, now MTN operates a product-focused linear business model in about 24 different countries, while Amazon, on the other hand, is a customer and data-driven company navigating a virtual unregulated global market. So for Africa to be part of the next generation of unicorns, Africa has to offer its, innovators a single digital home market of about 1.2 billion customers. Okay, so before we can dream of conquering the rest of the world, we need to sort out ourselves and come together, as a market, so that investors, innovators can apply a one rule scenario that goes around, or it becomes applicable, to the generality of the market. Now, quite a number of interesting things are happening. One of them is the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which I think was signed sometime, Nigeria was actually the last country to sign. So the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, if it's applied to the letters, is going to aggregate the African market and make it available, to innovators and businessmen and techpreneurs, in Africa. Now, the launch of, Smart Africa 7 years ago is also a very important step, in the right direction. So Africa as a continent must consciously look at policy trusts, okay, that will create a unified market out of Africa. Until we do that, we will be very limited.
We'll open it up for, audience participation at some point, but I want to kind of drill a bit deeper into some of the issues you've raised. So top line discussions, they make a lot of sense, but for someone who does, public policy work, especially with governments in Africa, we know that there's none of this stuff we've talked about that's easy to be done, right? You're also building businesses across Africa, and I expect that you have a few battle scars, to share. So my point is, how do we begin? So we know what needs to be done. We know we need to integrate Africa. After that, you've talked about the free trade agreement is beginning to do that. But let's even bring it home. Let's talk about the core infrastructure that is required to get ready for the fourth industrial revolution. So the same way we needed express roads or trunk roads to connect us to be able to do manufacturing, and in the third industrial revolution, we need, for lack of a better term, maybe fiber, to connect and provide that highway that will move the data for us to be able to survive. What, in your experience, are the challenges we've seen in getting governments to see the value in laying fiber around their states? And what are some thoughts you have on how government can navigate those challenges, including make it attractive for private investors to play a role?
Okay, so of course, government is the elephant in the room. Government can be very toxic when they are not doing the right thing, when they lack the political will, and when policies are not consistent and deliberate. Now, in Nigeria, quite a few interesting things are happening, but I would not say we're there yet. Recently, there was some sort of adjustment that was made in the Ministry of Communications, where it became the Ministry of Digital Economy. Now, it's possible to view that just as a nomenclature change. But now, when you look at some of the things coming out of it, some of the policies coming out of NIDA, some of the effort by the minister to aggregate government policies around digital economy or digital technology or digital infrastructure development, then you will begin to see that maybe there is actually some light, at the end of the tunnel. Now, but policies alone cannot do it. There is need for massive infrastructure build out. Now, infrastructure build out is already happening. The telcos, MTN, Glo, etc., Main One are doing a lot in building the what you may want to call the backhaul infrastructure, linking all the states in Nigeria. But the backhaul infrastructure is also not just adequate, because until you do what they call the last mile, until that backhaul infrastructure from Lagos to Enugu begins to drill down to the streets in Enugu, the backhaul infrastructure from Lagos to Kano begins to go down to the streets, begin to go down to the homes, to the small businesses, and until it cascades down to that extent, the cost will still be high. Okay, so because it's a volume thing. So as the backhaul infrastructure becomes the last mile, as that happens, the cost comes down. As the cost comes down, it becomes accessible to everybody. Until that happens, we are still not going to be, where we should be. Now, there are quite a number of challenges with respect to, driving, the deployment of, last mile infrastructure. One of them, is right of way. Now, some very forward-looking governments, like the government of Kaduna State and a few other governments, I can't remember now, have actually come up with some incentives that is going to encourage investors, to come in and build those needed infrastructure. So when government, for example, is asking investors to pay for right of way, it becomes a deterrent, because our investor will rather commit the funds they have in investing in fiber optics and other components that are needed to, to deploy those capabilities, instead of paying government, right of way. Government can actually make some money down the line from taxes. Government can make a lot of, take out a lot of value from the transformation that kind of infrastructure is going to bring to the community, from the access it's going to give to the young ones. There is an Airtel advert I really love, where they say that data is life. Patrick, indeed, data has become the new life, as a matter of fact. And when people are deprived of data, it's almost like they are deprived of oxygen. So whatever that can be done to get government to become forward-looking in terms of creating the right incentives that will enable investors, put their money in deployment of those infrastructure will go a long way to help. Another interesting area is in education. We need a completely different kind of skill sets today. Back in the days when we were in school, studying computer science and engineering, they spent 5 years or 4 years teaching us, programming languages that we're never going to need. Those are things I could have learned in a history class. That's the truth. Okay. Oh, yes. And then focus on more contemporary languages or technologies which are needed in 21st century, but that's not the case. So there's actually a very urgent need for some people to sit back and rejig, our tertiary education curriculum.
I agree.
These things are done. I believe that we will not be left behind in this.
Okay, let's pull in some of our participants. I see a hand up by Ifeanyi Madanusi. If we can grant him audio to ask his question. Please keep it short if you can hear me.
Yeah, good afternoon, the panelists and Dr. Patrick and Dr. Eze. It's a privilege to participate in this.
If you can make the question short so we can, catch up on other things.
Okay, my questions, number one is on the ICT penetration or growth you mentioned with regards to Kenya. Were you able to match it up with Nigeria, or what makes Kenya to be able to achieve what they were able to achieve? Then excellent. Lastly, it dwells on the last part of your statement, because I was waiting for it, but I wrote down my question. Lastly, you mentioned it on the education to get the skill sets. I was wondering, even if we have the policies, the infrastructure, the investors coming in, how do we properly position Africa with skill sets in AI, big data, coding, ICT engineering to manage or champion the growth of this fourth industrial revolution, to avoid Africa just ending up being a mere market and not active participants that will share in the profits? How do we avoid the possibility of our young ones ending up more impoverised if they don't participate? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's bring in Chike for his question. If you can keep it short as well. Chike, please.
Patrick, good afternoon, and I'd like also to thank Kingsley. Firstly, it's not more of a question, but I'd just like to share your fears, like you expressed them, Patrick, and then yes. also to express a few doubts about leapfrogging as a means of getting into the fourth revolution. But yes. There also is a possibility. Firstly, it's difficult to now expect a country that cannot manufacture, even a prime mover, cannot manufacture pin, toothpick, to jump into the fourth revolution. Now, you're only just going to be a market. Is that what we want? For Africa to become a market of the fourth revolution? If that is what we want, then it's possible. But for Africa to be part of this world and the growth of the fourth revolution, then Africa has to do a few things. Number one is bringing their market together, and then also having a policy of production. If you do not have a policy of production, there's no way you can start, you can be a world power. It can't happen.
Sure.
And then the only good thing which Africa must leap onto is the fact that the other revolutions, other first, second, and third revolution came with a whole lot of their baggages. It's like electricity will come with the grid and the network, but now we know that within your house you can have solar and have energy. But we also know the telephone grid of the old days, but now you know that with a cell phone you can always talk to with oil wells and all that. You see, which if Africa wants to get into the fourth industrial revolution, they must also quicken up to get the rudiments of technology, because if you do not have technology, you are only going to be there for the market for others to enjoy.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Let's go back to Kingsley. One question and some contributions from Chike. How do you respond to those?
Okay, so Chike, thank you very much. I mean, I agree with Chike 100% on the need for urgency, okay? We really need to move fast, you know, because in the tech space, it's so easy to figure out the strong advantage of first mover. If you create a platform that provides a certain kind of service and you get it right, you know, you price it right, you have, you know, you have superior service quality, chances are that there will not be a lot of churn against that platform if a new one comes up. So if, you know, so it's just like somebody creating a new Facebook today. So Facebook really has to commit some unforced error for all the Facebook subscribers to leave Facebook for any other thing you might want to build around Facebook. So that urgency is understood. Now, but reality is that quite a number of things are happening. Are they happening at the scale and pace that, you know, people like Chike and I, and I'm sure some other of the Nigerians and Africans would want it? I don't think so. I talked about the need for the African market to come together as one market. If you remember the MTN and Amazon example I gave, I think that responds to that part of your question. So that's a must do. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is also designed to address that challenge. Okay, if it's dealt with, you know, to the letters of the agreement, I'm sure that that will be done. But the fourth industrial revolution is completely different from the very first three we've had, in terms of, you know, the infrastructure requirements. It is essentially led by the creatives. I think a good example I can share here will be what our, you know, Nollywood industry did. You know, they essentially hit the ground running. You know, at some point it was almost like they were using their phone cameras, you know, to shoot the videos. Now, but they were in the marketplace, and which I think is the most important thing. Now, today, if you look at the quality of videos, the quality of movies coming out of our movie industry, and compare it with what, you know, the likes of Osofia and Co did, you know, years back, which was good, by the way, you will see a lot of improvement. So what I'm trying to say is that exactly the same thing is going to happen, or is happening, you know, in the tech space. Quite a number of things are happening, largely led by private individuals. You know, we have a hub in Enugu. There are at least 20 different hubs in the Southeast, for example. There are several of them in Lagos. There are a couple of them in Abuja, in Kaduna, in several places. So those things are happening. Government is responding, maybe a bit, you know, too slowly. The creation of the Ministry of, you know, Digital Economy, to me, is a very good step in the right direction. And if we continue to sustain such good steps, I believe, you know, some of those our fears will be dealt with and will not be cut off, you know, the digital revolution. Now, the first question was about Kenya. Kenya is doing well. Kenya is, I would say, in terms of technology, innovation, and all that, Kenya is ahead. Kenya is ahead because they started early to make the right, you know, investment. About 93% of the public schools in Kenya have all the capabilities for technology development deployed at that level. Public schools, I'm not talking about private schools. So you don't have that yet in Nigeria. So you have a lot of, you know, efforts here and there by some private institutions. I mean, a good example is that a university like Covenant University, you know, is a clear pace setter. Okay, now you also have a number of public institutions at the tertiary level that are also partnering with private sectors and doing a lot of wonderful things. You know, UNN, ESUT, you know, a good number of them I can't remember now, but several of such, FUTO, several of such public schools are also partnering with private institutions. You know, in this instance, they're working with us, Tennessee and Genesis Hub, to incubate or to, to evolve, a very technology-based teaching and learning environment. Okay, we have also deployed some sort of campus hubs, in those institutions where we're making efforts, to share the vision and begin to win disciples in, at that level. But that's not enough. So some of the things we are doing today were the things Kenya did 10 years ago, and that's why they are where they are today. But the good thing is that we already have come to the party, and if we continue to do the right things, we'll progress.
Excellent. Let me pull in Engineer Bindri, who until recently was the Director General of the National Office for Technology Acquisition and Promotion, before he then went on to become Secretary to Government of Adamawa State. Engineer Bindri, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor, for your very motivating presentation. But I have a very, very short question. See, I look at Africa.
Head northeast toward Motors Industrial Way, then slight right onto Motors Industrial Way.
So I see Africa having 3 legs for its development, whether you look at the 4th industrial revolution or any level of development. Egypt is at the top there. It has the educational infrastructure, the volume in terms of population, and or maybe even location. However, Egypt is more Arabic than Africa south of the Sahara. You have South Africa at the bottom, good economy, good energy, knowledge, and technology. Again, South Africa is more European, then Nigeria is in the middle. To me, if Africa is actually to leapfrog, Nigeria is key. However, Nigeria is faced with very, very high poverty, irrespective of where you're located. How, in your estimation, would you ginger all these bits and pieces that you have put together? You want to move data in amongst people that don't recognize data. You want to move technology in a very weakly, where the education is weak. So the poverty is really, really high. How do you coagulate all these ideas you're putting together to unleash this opportunity in this high poverty country, to explore the opportunities, knowing fully well that the Nigerian is very enterprising, we have the population, we're located properly, and we have literally most things going for us. How, in your own opinion?
Thank you. He just promoted you to President of Nigeria. So,
Thank you very much, Engineer Bandi. Honestly speaking, poverty, to me, should actually be the reason why we should strive to get out of the woods, and not a reason to remain there. I mean, the world is replete with very good examples of, countries that came from very bad position and have transformed. I mean, if you still look at Africa, Rwanda is an excellent example. Rwanda has become a case study, in terms of good governance, in terms of, turning a bad story to a success story, okay? If you look at what China is today, and the China example may be one that has been overflogged, but it's also a good example. But if you look at what China is today and where China was 30 or 35, by the time Chairman Mao started his transformation, of China, or opening of China, it's a far cry. And in 30 or so years, China has moved more than 600 million people out of poverty. So my point is that poverty shouldn't be a deterrent. With the right policies, and Nigeria is, the government of Nigeria might be a poor government, but I always have this impression, particularly today, where wealth is no longer about the oil you have. Venezuela has the world's largest deposit of oil, and Venezuela is in a mess, is a basket case, okay? Our wealth today is actually in our human capital. If we fix our educational system and produce graduates who indeed are well-trained in school, who are ready for the industry. If we come up with the right policies that will enable people bring money and invest, money will flow from those rich economies to our economy. It is that's the way it works. So poverty is an advantage in this instance, because with the right policy thrust, with the enabling environment, money is going to flow from those wealthy economies in this direction, because there is going to be huge returns, because the need is massive. So that's the way I would like us to view it. Yeah.
Okay, so there's always a talk about what government should do, right? And I think with the new minister of the digital economy, he's put out a policy position, which for all intents and purposes is a good document. The challenge will always be how it's implemented, and bigger challenge in this phase, in this economic reality that we're in, where the government might not have the funds, to back up its intent. But what can the private sector do? I like the analogy you used initially, that get sugar, wrap it up in whatever you want, put it in the darkest room possible, ants will always find it, right? So what can the private sector do when they find that sugar? So I know that you're with Genesis Tech Hub, you're helping to incubate businesses. What else? What else can the private sector do that will then force governments to catch up and lead all of us into this fourth industrial revolution?
Excellent. Patrick, the private sector, I would say the private sector in Nigeria has actually been quite responsive. And I think what they are doing is, some of those gaps that I already identified, the skill capacity mismatch, they are trying to address it. The inadequate curriculum, which exists today in our institutions, they are trying to address it through capacity building. I mean, for example, at Genesis Tech Hub, one of the things we do is that every year we take about 100 people, and these 100 people are either graduates or undergraduates, and run them through a very intensive training program that we call codename Learnable. Now, what we're trying to do there is, or do with that program, is to complement our young people, to fill the gap that is existing because of the curriculum mismatch. Okay. Now, what happens is that by the time these guys are done with that training, they are not anything close to what they were by the time they join the training in terms of knowledge, particularly the kind of knowledge that is needed for innovation, for tech innovation. So private sector is doing quite a lot in the area of capacity building. The other one is in establishment of technology hubs. Access Bank has a technology hub. First Bank has a technology hub. I mean, I can name several of them, and they invest a lot of funds in those hubs. In fact, when you visit any of those hubs, they compare with the ones you're going to see in places like Berlin or even in Silicon Valley. And those hubs have become incubators or centers for product development. So what they are doing in those hubs is trying to use the capacities they built, they reside there, to develop products that will solve local and continental problems. Okay, now they're also involved in enterprise development, venture incubation and funding. And I'll also start with Genesis Tech Hub. In the past 4 years, we have been giving at least $30,000 to a minimum of 5 early stage startups. And these are young Nigerians who come up with very good ideas we believe could solve specific problems in the society. Okay, quite recently, Sterling Bank, did a hackathon where one of the labs emanating from Genesis Tech Hub, I think they won the third prize. Now, somebody won the first prize, somebody won the second prize, and these are cash prizes. Those prizes go a long way in supporting or sustaining the young guys who are committing their time and resources, to developing products or technologies that can change the way we live and do things. Okay, so the private sector is not doing badly. It is possible that there is a lot they can still do. A lot of last mile infrastructure today that is existing in Nigeria are all private sector led and not government. Okay, so my view is that the private sector is really doing quite a lot.
Excellent, excellent. And I mean, you know, it will be amiss to be having this conversation now and not talk a bit about, you know, what's happening in contemporary Nigeria today. You know, the same young people have decided that they are not going to live in the country of their fathers, and they've decided to take their frustration to the street to ask for certain changes in the way Nigeria is run. Now, what I find most fascinating about the current protests is the role that technology, you know, is playing in driving the protest, in raising monies to support it, in organizing. But what I find most interesting is the passion, you know, of these young people. So my question is, you know, what are some thoughts on how we can harness this energy? Okay, so the energy today is about ending SARS or whatever that means. I just feel like that energy can be harnessed in some way to look at other issues, including something like youth unemployment, for instance. You know, and I know this is probably beyond the scope of technology entrepreneur, but just to have a conversation around these young people that we have today, who appear to be different from their fathers and their uncles. How do we harness, you know, this passion that's in them to solve some of the bigger problems we have in Nigeria?
So Patrick, the millennials and the Generation Z folks are completely different. You know, you have no idea how different they are from us and from our parents. And maybe it's for the good of the country and of the world. I would like to share a personal story. When this whole NSAS protest started, my daughter, who just turned 18, you know, sent me a message and essentially was asking me, so what am I doing? What am I doing? Am I involved in this protest or am I staying back? And I responded like the traditional Nigerian father, which is be cautious, be careful. I agree with the need for things to change in the country, but I don't want lives lost, particularly lives that are, you know, close to me. And she said to me in like the coldest way I can imagine, Dad, I am disappointed. And I stopped chatting. I had to call her. I had to call her to explain myself, you know. No, but that's by the way. But that's the reality of our young folks. Now, but the good thing is that energy, that conviction, that's you know, ability, that fact that they are not held back by some of the cultures and traditions that restrain us from expressing ourselves, is actually an advantage that can be harnessed for the good of the country. I mean, if you take the NSAS protest, for example, my view is that if indeed the right changes happen, it's going to be for the best of everybody, for the best of Nigeria, for the best of the police force. I mean, look at it. One of the things they're also asking for is that the salary of the policemen be increased.
All right.
The policemen should be retrained. Is that the policemen should be made to be more friendly, you know, and all that. And the truth is, I mean, I have a couple of friends in the police who are fantastic guys, but you cannot deny the fact that there are also some of them who are actually not representing very well. Reality is that if you take the police off the streets, be it SARS, be it SWAT, or whatever name we choose to call them, if you take them off the streets, we are going to find ourselves in a more dangerous situation. But at the same time, if you also leave them on the streets with a certain culture or mindset that is detrimental to the objectives of the police, you also get the wrong results. So I like what is happening. I like the fact that you know, we have a generation that is ready to say no, you know, to things that are not right. And I'm also happy with the way government is responding to it. It didn't take more than 2 days for the IG of police to come out to say, okay, we hear you. We are banning SARS. and we're coming up with something new. Is that the right way to do it? I don't know. But at least there is some response to the agitation. And I believe if things have been, Patrick, there was a book you recommended to me last year, The Narrow Corridor. I mean, I read it and it's fantastic. And I think every Nigerian should read that book. Now, in summary, what The Narrow Corridor is saying is that there is a tension between civic society and the state.
Right.
The states will continue to push for what they believe they can do, and the civic society will continue to push for what they think the state should do. Now, in that tension, in that contention, there is a narrow room, you know, for dancing around each other, the state yielding to the request, but also putting the civic society in check so we don't have a serious situation.
Correct.
Okay? And at the same time, you know, the civic society also putting government in check, so we also don't have a North Korea. Okay, now countries that have done well, you know, in Europe, in America, and other developed nations, you know, countries that have done well are countries that have done a good job in maintaining that contention and ensuring that that narrow corridor continues to exist. Patrick, that narrow corridor has never been in Nigeria, and I think it's beginning to come up, and it's going to be for the good of the whole country.
No, I'm happy to see that you take some of my recommendations seriously.
A few of them.
And you know, for those who read next year Insights, we're going to do a review of that book. You know, if not in next week's Insights, the following one. But let me get one more question in or two before I ask you for your closing remarks, because I can't believe we've already spent an hour. Of all the technology you're seeing coming out of the different industrial innovation hubs around Nigeria, which is the one that excites you the most? You know, what is it that you're seeing if you're an investor, you know, if you're to make a bet on some of the technology, you know, going from maybe InterSwitch to Paystack that just got, you know, $200 million in investment yesterday or today, to some of the, you know, smaller ones you're seeing in the Yaba corridor or, you know, in Genesis Tech Hub or wherever else. What's exciting you?
So, Patrick, you know, first is that my belief is that these technologies must be targeted or designed to solve problems, particularly problems that hurt us the most.
Yes.
Quite a number of interesting products have come out in the fintech space. You know, Flutterwave, Paystack, InterSwitch is a super success. You know, transformed, you know, the financial systems in Nigeria. Interestingly, you and I were part of that project during our consulting days. And we can see in InterSwitch how such innovation can change, you know, things significantly. At Genesis Tech Hub, we've come up with very fantastic products. One I would like to share here is partshop.com, which is essentially a platform where, you know, people can buy auto spare parts and accessories and other components. Okay. Now, but to be honest, of all the things happening around, one that I find very interesting is a product, you know, I'm trying to remember what it's called, that is targeted at crowdfunding for agriculture.
Farm crowding?
Farm crowding, yes.
Farm crowding, yeah.
Now, the reason it is not because of the, you know, the extensiveness or the how tight the technology is and all that, not at all, but how that initiative can transform the agricultural space in Nigeria, which is an area I believe we have not given the right attention as a people. If you imagine the number of the billions of dollars we spend every year importing agricultural produce, we can't feed ourselves, Patrick. And we're talking about technology and other things. Imagine what happens if we can feed ourselves and become a net exporter of agricultural produce. It's going to be uhuru for us, you know, as a people. So I am very excited about that product. And I'll be happy to see a lot more of such products, you know, come out, you know, out of Nigeria, you know, and that will also be attractive, you know, to the rest of the world.
Excellent. In fact, the boys at Farm Crowdy is an interesting company. We hope to have them on this platform soon.
Excellent.
To talk more about what they are doing. In some of the other African countries, what are you seeing there that's exciting you? In Kenya, in Ghana, in Ethiopia, that's becoming a massive opportunity. What are you seeing that's exciting you?
So Ethiopia is still largely, an insulated, country. Most of the things are still driven by government. Okay, Kenya, Egypt, South Africa. South Africa kind of slowed down in the past 4 to 5 years. There was a time South Africa was actually the reference point when it comes to innovation in Africa. But I don't see a lot of new things coming out of South Africa in recent times. Kenya, to me, remains the jewel. They have what I would call blockbuster products. M-Pesa is one of them. I know what they say, nothing succeeds like success. The success of M-Pesa has actually enthused a lot of young people in Kenya. And, Kenya is littered with all kinds of tech hubs. And the thing about innovation, Patrick, is that the products that will make that resounding impact, the product that will become that unicorn, may not be what it was at the point of conceiving it. What usually happens is that some guy is working on something in this hub, another guy is working on something else somewhere, another guy is working on something else, but people are busy working on different things, and someday all those things connect and it resonates, big time. Now, so I am hopeful that you're going to see a lot of things, coming out of Kenya just because of the, size of, and intensity of the activities, happening in Kenya. And I see that also happening in Nigeria. The guys in Yaba, I'm trying to remember their names, they're sorry?
Andela.
Not even Andela. I can't remember them. In fact, they were actually the first hub we made. We gave them about $10,000 almost 8 years ago, when people didn't even know about. Tennessee gave them, $10,000 just to support, what they were doing. I can't remember their name.
Yeah.
So, but I receive newsletters from them almost on a weekly basis. They are doing fantastic stuff. And I know it's just a matter of time, quite a number of wonderful things. They're doing a lot of things in agriculture, in healthcare, and so on. So it's just a matter of time, quite a number of, interesting things are going to come out of there. And I believe that as innovation and the whole thing about, tech hub begins to gain popularity or interest around us, it's the way our people are in Nigeria. The moment something, like we say, it catches fire, we run with it. So we're gradually getting to that point, I believe, where it's going to catch that fire, and Nigeria will become, an interesting reference point when it comes to, technology, innovation, and wonderful.
I cannot agree more with you. I mean, I believe that the energy we have in the country, I believe that the youth, the young people, and how they are both international and local, so they understand what's happening in the world, but they're also grounded. I have a lot of faith in, in these young people, that they will figure it out. Yeah. And I hear you that they do not have some of the baggages we were born with. Some of those baggages associated with ethnicity, with religion, with major events that happened in the life of Nigeria. They didn't have to live or survive under a dictatorship. So they were born free, and that is the world they know, and they are demanding that they want to continue to live in a free world. And I think that all of that energy will come together. So we're 1 minute to the end, and let me give you that 1 minute to kind of make a closing, statement around this topic, Africa and the fourth industrial revolution. Is it a leap forward, or are we going to be left behind? 1 minute to you.
So Patrick, we will not be left behind. It's going to be a leap forward. I am not just being optimistic here. I am saying it, because I am involved. We are active players in the space. I also know a number of things happening in the space. And because of the hope and confidence that exudes from our young people, I don't see people who are ready to sit back and be taken over in those young people. I have a lot of them working with me. I engage with them a lot. The positive vibes emanating from them is contagious, Patrick. And I don't see them sitting back and watching Nigeria, go down the drains. Now, while I say that, we're also faced with the serious challenge of attrition. Our major challenge today is actually making sure we maintain the kind of environment that will encourage them to continue to stay in Nigeria. Mm-hmm. Patrick, last year alone, we lost 2 of our guys from Genesis Tech Hub to some universities in Germany. Some universities in Germany offered them free tuition, free everything. And it's difficult, an offer so difficult to refuse. And those people will continue to hunt for good talents, and Nigeria will always be their destination or their source for such talents. So I think the challenge we have is to create the kind of environment that will ensure that our people continue to exercise some level of faith in Nigeria, stay back to, to want to contribute to fixing Nigeria. If we don't do that, then maybe that is when, that fear, will come to reality.
I hear you loud and clear. I was going to offer you a shoulder to cry on because you lost some of your people, but I'm losing my people too, to Canadian visa and Australian visa and so on. It's the pain of life, but we go with it. So I thank you for, making time to join us this afternoon on, this one-on-one discussion. I really appreciate that. And I also appreciate everyone who's joined and participated online. We couldn't get to all the questions, but we thank you, for making time to join us. Join us again this time next week. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be, but it will be communicated in the magazine. Thank you very much and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you, King.